Welcome back to the book of Leviticus. As we've said before, Leviticus is a difficult book, and it's quite often passed over. I'm trying to break it up into a number of sections for you, roughly about 20 minutes, 18-20 minutes each. Now let's take a look at the general layout of the book. I told you the book is in two halves. The book builds up to a climax and then flows from a climax. It's sort of a multi-layered sandwich, sort of a kind of McDonald's massive burger. I don't know what they're called because I don't eat them, but a Big Mac with lots of different things in it, and there we are. And there's something right in the middle, and there are bits flowing out at either side, making a sort of arrow formation, so to speak. And you will see straight away that the first correspondence to the last, and the second to the second last, are, and so on, leading to the middle. So it sort of goes like this. I don't know whether you got that. We'll see as we go on. It's beautifully put together. Remember that God is responsible for this pattern, and not Moses, the writer. There's more of the Word of God in Leviticus than in any other book of the Bible. About 90% of the book of Leviticus is direct speech from God. The Lord said to Moses, and then we go on. There is no other book in the Bible that has so much of God's direct speech. So if you want to read God's word, it's a great place to start. But as I said, it's the way of reading it is slightly laboured, so it's often skipped. And God puts this together, and you can see a pattern and a harmony in it. Now, the way that this is put together is 1 to 7 offerings and sacrifices, 8 to 10 is priesthood, 11 to 15 is unclean to clean, and then 16 is the centerpiece with the Day of Atonement. 17 to 22 goes with 11 and 15, that's common and holy. 23 to 25, which is worship, goes with priesthood. And 26 to 27, which is sanctions and vows, goes with offerings and sacrifice. So the offerings and sacrifice is of the first 7 chapters are backed up by the sanctions and vows of the people in the last section. The priesthood in great detail corresponds to the worship that they are to lead, and how the worship of the people is to be led. But here are two main distinctions which people have to learn, and I'm going to come back to that in the next part of it, which is very important to find out the difference between clean and unclean, and between common and holy. And these are not the same thing, and we shall see that is going to be another key to Leviticus. But I'll do that in a section completely on its own. And as I said, I'm trying to break this up into manageable parts so that you can get the whole gist of Leviticus. And then hopefully read it for yourselves, because there's nothing like reading a book for yourself. But sometimes when you're going through a book, it's difficult when you're going in blind, and that's the whole point of what I'm trying to do, is to give you sort of like ammunition to basically separate the bones out. And as I've said, this isn't me. None of this is me. This is all, for want of a better word, pinched from other people, and it's I don't claim to have written or in any way influenced any of this. This is all other people's work, and I make no claim to it. I'm just putting it over in a palatable form. But the whole thing, the whole of this arrow formation, builds up to one day called the Day of Atonement. That's the day on which they had to take two animals, and they had to sacrifice one animal in the camp. And what was a key this is, the other animal, a goat, they would put their hands on its head, one after another, the whole tribe, and confess their sins, and then push the goat out of the camp into the wilderness, where it would die with all their sins loaded on it. It was a scapegoat, and that's where the term actually comes from, a scapegoat. It came into our language directly from Leviticus, the scapegoat, the one who gets all the blame, the one who carries all the wrongs of the others away. And that's the whole essence of the scapegoat. The book, as I've said, is split into two halves, before the Day of Atonement and after. And from the Christian point of view, the first half describes our way to God, justification, and the second half describes our way with God, sanctification. Now, that gives us the shape of the book. So we'll start 1 to 7, offerings and sacrifices. Burnt offerings is a surrender. You bought an animal, burnt the whole thing, and let God smell it. The whole thing was given to God, and God loves the smell of roast mutton, and it was a sweet smelling savour to him, and you were offering the whole thing to him. The gratitude meal was a service. This offering, you kept part of it for yourself, and you had a meal with God, and God had a bit, and you had the rest, and it was a meal offering. And then the peace sacrifice, serenity, and you've got all the details of that in Leviticus. But I want you to notice the first three offerings were the right way to say thank you to God for a blessing. They were not offerings for sin, and they were thank offerings. In other words, do you feel grateful to God? Then this is how you want to say thank you to God, is in one of these three offerings. And this is how you express your gratitude to God if you were a Jew and are glad you're alive, grateful for health, grateful for money, family, whatever you're grateful for. Then you show your gratitude to God in this way. And the Jews could choose one of these three ways to just say thank you to God. The other two offerings were not to express gratitude, but rather they were to deal with guilt. There was the sin offering and the trespass offering, and these did two things. First of all, they made atonement for sin. They offered God compensation for what you'd done wrong. Atonement means to compensate. So you were offering atonement for your sin. So if you atone for something, you offer something as in compensation. And both of these are compensation offerings to God. And they both involve blood and they involve life. As a compensation to God for a bad life you have lived, you offer a good life that has not sinned. But one of the most important things in these two offerings is they only work for unintentional sin. They do not work for deliberate sin. In other words, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We fall into sin unintentionally. We don't intend to do wrong, but we did it. Now, God provides an offering for unintentional sin, but it's really important to get this. It's for unintentional sin. It's not for deliberate sin. And there isn't an offering that you can make to God for deliberate sin. And a lot of people think that you can make an offering to God for deliberate sin, but there is no offering that you can make to God for deliberate sin. That's very important because it's picked up in the New Testament. The New Testament distinguishes between accidental sin in Christians and deliberate and willful sin in Christians. And the New Testament, like the Old, says that if deliberate sin after being forgiven is no more, there is no more sacrifice for it. So that comes straight out of the book of Leviticus. Deliberate sin in those who've been forgiven is very serious, which is why Jesus said to the woman caught in adultery, go and sin no more. You've been caught, you've been forgiven, now go away and don't do it again. Because if you do it again, there will be dire consequences. That's what Jesus is saying to the woman. This distinction runs right the way through the New Testament, as it does the Old. between deliberate sin in God's people and accidental sin in God's people. And for accidental sin, there is full provision made. But God knows we're weak. He knows we fall. He knows we don't intend to. As Paul says, the evil I would not that I do. And that's unintentional, accidental, and that covers those sins. So the guilt offerings is sin and substitute in terms of sin, and trespass and thus satisfaction. I'm not going to say much about the priests in the book of Leviticus, because that's pretty straightforward. I'd like to go straight through to the fact that they had no calendar to observe in the New Testament, and they had no calendar to observe. And in the New Testament, we don't. There is no Christian calendar in the New Testament. For the Jews, a calendar was a vital part of their walk with God. They were being treated as children. Adults don't as such need a calendar, because we know when things is the right time to do things. But children do, to remind them of the things that they would forget. And there are a number of feasts mentioned in the book of Leviticus that they have to be kept. There's the Passover feast, and it's the 15th of the first month, roughly March or April time. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, to remember how God brought them out of slavery in Egypt on the day before the Passover. A lamb had to be killed at 3 o'clock precisely in the afternoon, which is amazing. So you kill the lamb at 3 in the afternoon, and then the following day begins Passover, reminiscent of Jesus dying at 3 o'clock, and then the following day you go into Passover. There's the First Fruits Festival, which is 3 days later. They had to offer the first fruits of the harvest to God 3 days later. Ring any bells. If it doesn't ring any bells, then okay. But if it does ring bells 3 days after the killing of the lamb and the Passover starting, the first fruits of them that sleep. And then we've come to Pentecost 50 days later, and there's the word Penti again, 5 or 50 days. They had to hold the feasts of weeks, because that was the day that the law was given on Sinai, on Mount Sinai, and they had to remember that and give thanks for it. But do you know what happened when the law was given on Mount Sinai on the first Pentecost? On the first Pentecost, they sinned, and many were put to death, and there were 3,000 people put to death. So that when the law was given on the first Pentecost, 3,000 people perished. Centuries later, when the Spirit of God was given on Pentecost, 3,000 people were saved. So God took away 3,000 people and he gave back 3,000 people. It's amazing how the whole Bible holds together. Those were the feasts at the beginning of the year. Then we come to the feasts at the end of the year. The Feast of Trumpets is the first of the 7th month. The old ram's horn, the shofar, was blown, and that signalled a whole new round of feasts. And the second of which was the Day of Atonement, which was 3 days after the Feast of Trumpets. And that was a crucial day when the scapegoat was pushed out of the camp with all the sins of all the people on it. And it was followed by the Feast of Tabernacles 15 to 22 days later. And it went from 15 days later to 22 days later, 8 days. The Feast of Succoth or Booths, when they moved out of their houses and lived in shelters. And if you can imagine the whole sort of tribe would be living on maybe the side of a mountain, with the most important people in the high places and the lower people in the lower places, and they all had to move out of their homes and live in shelters or tents. They had to be able to see the stars through their roof to remind them of the 40 years foolish wandering in the wilderness, when they could have been in the promised land in 11 days. So that group of 3 feasts came towards the end of their year. Now, all these feasts have been fulfilled in a Christian way. The first 3 have been fulfilled in the first coming of Jesus, which is already past to us. But the second 3 will be fulfilled in his second coming, so they're future. We don't know the year when Jesus will be back, but we do know the month. It'll be September, October, because he always does things on time. And this is when to expect the Messiah. Every time the trumpet is mentioned, and the New Testament, in the New Testament, it is to announce his coming. So these 3 these 3 first feasts are over, and they are fulfilled in Christ's first coming. But the second 3 feasts will be fulfilled at his second coming. And that date of atonement, redemption, will come to the whole nation of Israel. Now, there are 2 more, and this is a weekly rest, and for slaves who had been in Egypt, who had worked 7 days a week, they what a blessing a day of rest would have been. There is no trace of a Sabbath in the Bible before Moses. Adam didn't have a Sabbath. He worked 7 days a week, nor did Abraham, nor did Moses, up until that time when God said to him to have a rest. And it was introduced as a weekly day of rest. Not a holiday, not a family day. It was a day for God, a holy day. And that was part of their calendar. The first were annual, and this is a weekly holiday. And the last is Jubilee, and it is held every 50 years. Every 50 years, everybody's bank balance was levelled up. Wouldn't you enjoy that? All the properties were reverted to the families who originally owned them in it every 50 years, so that leases got cheaper and cheaper the nearer the 50th year. because they were shorter and shorter. And slaves would be set free on that 50th year. All sorts of amazing things would happen. So people looked forward to the year of Jubilee and to the acceptable year of the Lord. When there was good news for the poor, because they'd be rich again, when the captives would be set at liberty, and Jesus proclaimed, the Spirit of the Lord is on me to set at liberty the captive and the good news, for the poor to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. In other words, Jesus began the real Jubilee, to which every one of these had been looking forward. You see how important it is to understand the Old Testament. And in understanding the Old Testament, we can therefore understand the New. Well, it's been a little bit longer, this one, than normal, and I'm sure the next one will be just as interesting. And hopefully see you then. God bless. Goodbye.